Welcome to Reverse Sweep, presented by USAA Insurance. Today, we're going to talk about FaZe, and we're going to talk about dynasties, that buzzword that people have been chirping about, considering the run FaZe has had and some of those core players like Simp and aBeZy over the last couple years. So, Pacman Enable, I'm going to throw the question to you guys. I'm going to start with Pacman. Do you believe that Atlanta FaZe is a dynasty?
I do, and I think it goes without question to me that they're a dynasty. What defines a dynasty, really? Dominance over a prolonged period of time. Simp and aBeZy have been at the top of Call of Duty since Black Ops 4. That's 3 seasons now. In this title, they've gone to every single final. In the last title, they were the best team in the game for the majority of the game. Black Ops 4, they won the back-to-back biggest tournaments of the year. Everyone expects so much from them, and they keep delivering over and over and over again. I don't even know what their fall off has been throughout this time. I couldn't tell you. They're setting and breaking their own records. They're a team that everyone expects to be there. There's posts like, is it boring that they're winning? That's what people say when it's expected of you. You're a dynasty when that happens. And I feel like there hasn't been a time since the complexity run where people actually fully expect a team to be in the finals. And I think that's what you could say about all 3 dynasties at a point. But there was a time for even both complexity and OpTic where they weren't the best team during those runs. And I don't think that's ever happened for the core of this FaZe team. People often will put like duo championship numbers because I think that Simp and aBeZy have 6 championships or something like that. That's so clearly and obviously flawed as a metric, right? Because they haven't been around for nearly as much, and the tournament structure changed so much from where it was, where a lot of these people's numbers come from like Advanced Warfare or these other games where there was 30,000 tournaments in a year. Yeah. It was more possible to get more numbers. Not to take away from those guys. Those guys are GOATs. But just to use that number as the metric is flawed. Clearly, they're at the top of their profession, and it's consistent every single time. It's so consistent that it's hard to bring it up week to week. Like, oh, Simp is top of the damage board and 1.3 KD, and aBeZy's 1.2 with this and all this impact, and like Arcitys is struggling, but it doesn't really matter. Oh wow, Arcitys played great. Either way, it doesn't matter what's happening. They're always there, and that to me shows that they're a dynasty.
I'll go on the other side of this, Katie. I don't think Atlanta FaZe is a dynasty yet. I think they're right there. They're as close as any team has been since the OpTic Dynasty. I mean, there's only been 2 dynasties in Call of Duty. Complexity and then that OpTic team. But the thing that makes it tough to gauge right now is when you look at Complexity, right? In Black Ops 2 and Ghost, they had Clay for a little bit, and then they had Karma, right? But people still consider that, that Complexity team. When you look at OpTic, they had Nadeshot for a little bit, and then they had Karma as well. But it's different when you try to compare these 4 guys, because you look at Simp, aBeZy, and Arcitys. They won a chip together in Black Ops 4. And then you look at FaZe and MW with Simp, Cell, and aBeZy without Arcitys, and they won basically every event besides champs where they lost to Empire. And then you have them this year where they've lost 5 series all year. They've been to every single finals. They've won all but 1 major. They're there. Okay. Their track record, their resume is unbelievable. But I want to go back to when OpTic won the Infinite Warfare champs, where Courage had that, that legendary quote of the dynasty has been cemented. Even though 3 of the 4 already have a ring, I think they need to win a ring as a unit. And if they win one this year, then I don't think you could argue that they aren't a dynasty. I think that will, without a doubt, make them one. And then that's when it gets scary. Because when you look at these guys and how well they've been playing, if they do get the chip this year, they're a dynasty, they can shoot up the rankings. I mean, there's only 2 other teams right now, but they could easily surpass them. Especially like John said, there's a lot less tournaments now. So you can't really use the whole, Complexity or OpTic won 33 out of 40 events. It's like, it's different. We're in a different time now, but they're not there yet. They're right there, Katie. They're right there. And I do think they have the potential, potential being the big word here, to be the best dynasty of all time.
Okay, so then I have a question. I want to start with Ian, but okay, so say they win champs and we can now all agree, yes, dynasty, check that box. How much more do they have to win? What else do they have to win for you to put them above one of our other two dynasties, that OpTic roster and complexity? What would they have to do?
I mean, for me, if they win this champs, then you have to start looking at it as the core three, Arcitys, Simp, and aBeZy, have 2 rings, okay, as the squad, which I guess that's similar to, no, not complexity.
No one.
Yeah. So they would have 2 as a squad. They would have 2 total. The OpTic Dynasty only has 1, well, as a whole.
As a unit.
Yeah, as a unit. And then, I mean, in terms of like map records, like series win percentages, when you get into the really analytical things, they're already right there. They're already on par with that complexity and that OpTic team. The only thing that's missing is is less tournaments. So if they win champs this year, I think if they have another year like Cold War, it would be undoubtedly. Like if they go into whatever the Vanguard, whatever the next game is, and they're basically in every finals, even if they don't win that champs. And I know we're talking so far in the future, because who knows? You never know. Like they might not be a team next year. They probably will, but for argument's sake, if they do though, I think it hands down has to be them. The competition is a lot higher than it was back in the day, and they're just like level of consistency, like John was saying. It's almost boring because you just expect them to win. I think if they win this champs, hands down dynasty, if they have a good year next year, I think they could easily take the throne.
I mean, I already believe that they're a dynasty because of what I said earlier. And I think that if they win this one, then there's no question that they are the #1 dynasty, actually. I've always given that to complexity just because.
If they win champs this year, that's it, #1?
Yeah, well, they'll be the only core to get 2 world championship rings, right?
Sure.
That already puts them ahead. But more than that, I always judge it by the consistency and how I feel going into every single tournament. I always have felt that these guys are going to be in the finals. Like, never have I felt that they're going to falter. They're not going to give me a top 6. Not one tournament, even when they lost at champs last year, not one tournament did I feel like they were a lesser team going in. Not a
what's
single.
Their worst placing, John? Do you know?
Their worst placing is probably like a top 4. Like, yeah, probably a top 4. Because remember, last year's format was different. So you got out of groups and then you just played those 2 matches, right? So they probably lost to someone in that. I can't really remember. But regardless, they never lost in groups. Their consistency is unreal. If they win that second ring, there is no doubt that they're ahead of both OpTic and complexity. Complexity got 4th at their first tournament together, their first champs together. OpTic got back-to-back 7th places. And they were already a dynasty before that champs ring that they won. Had they got second at IW champs, they still would have been a dynasty. Why? Their jetpack era consistency was unreal. From game to game to game, regardless of whether or not they were the best team throughout all that period of time, they were always there. They weren't the best team at every step of the way. They were losing to FaZe. They were losing to Envy. Like, Envy was the best team at the end of Black Ops 3, no question. That has never happened to this FaZe team. Not one time. That's not to take away from OpTic and complexity. Fantastic. FaZe has not even fallen out of the top tier. They've never been considered the 3rd best team. But I would say that OpTic's strongest point is that it was 3 titles long. But throughout those 3 titles, we both know they weren't the single strongest team or throughout the entire thing. You would say that they were the best jetpack team, no question.
Yeah.
But there was times in all of those years, minus AW. I feel like Advanced Warfare by far their best game, even though they would lose to FaZe and head-to-head. In general, they were
13 out of 15 Advanced or something.
And that's where a lot of those numbers come from, that people pull like the duo numbers from. That's by far their best game. Black Ops 3, they weren't the best team in that game. They just weren't. But they were up there. IW, it was flip-flopping. They were up there with the best team, top 2 teams in the game the whole time. And then I would say, and they were obviously the strongest team at the end. There was battling going on. And throughout FaZe's run, that has never been the case. They're just ridiculous. And if they win this one, I don't see. They're the only team to get 2. by far. And then not only are the only team to get 2, their average placing would be what, 1.33 or whatever, because when they lost is second. Wild. Yeah, so like
that's ridiculous.
They're just ridiculous. That's it. That's it.
You know,
and the only thing that I'll say against them is that we may not have seen their quote unquote fall off, which will happen to everyone because we're all humans, yet, because the style of game hasn't changed. So complexity fell off, comes with like certain things happening in life, but then the style of game changed. Like we went to jetpacks.
Jetpacks, yeah.
It's a completely different beast. Like there's pros that you never even heard of. Like they didn't even exist. And then jetpack, like they're out of your mind. Jetpacks come, all of a sudden you have a different type of pro, different type of thought process that takes to be at the top. Then jetpacks leaves and we're going to World War II and OpTic falls off. Maybe my mind is a little skewed too because we haven't seen that, and maybe that works against FaZe, but until that time comes, I just don't see how you could argue against them. You
know what goes under the radar, Katie? And I don't want to get too off topic, but I think we do have to I just want to shed some light on it because we're talking about if FaZe win champs this year, right? If they do, I think there's an argument that Simp is already top 5 all time. Because you were talking about the placings, John. He would have, in 3 years, he would have 2 champs. The third would be another would be a second place. His average placing, Katie, I think is like 2 right now. It's like 2.33 over the span of basically 3 years. Multiple MVPs, multiple titles. I think that's like insane.
Yeah.
It's gross. Yeah.
Like, Lee legitimately could be the best player of all time when it's said and done. And this FaZe team could be the best dynasty of all time.
I love storylines like that. I love storylines like that.
If they do it.
Yeah,
the if is tough because I mean, winning champs is not easy.
No, they certainly have to do what we're laying out, and they can do it. But you know, you don't count your chickens before they hatch. Like you can't just say yes, they've won champs. No, they still have to do that. But
I will say, sorry to interrupt.
No,
sorry to interrupt, Katie. I know you're about to be on a roll. I do think it's easier to win champs now than it was in the past. Sorry, but you start over here in winners round 8 million. You win a match and you're in winners finals.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Champs before was a absolute fucking haul. Format change, whatever. You win a couple matches and you're in the final with it does make it a little bit easier, and I think that people have touched on it, and players would probably argue that on their behalf. Like, we had to win like 12 series to win champs. You won 2.
You can't fault them, though. They're just playing.
No, it's not their fault. It's not their fault.
But I mean, okay, context is important, and I think it's important to note it for whatever weight it may add into the discussion. But I think if anything, at the end of the day, being here and watching COD in the midst of what is either on the cusp of being a dynasty or already a dynasty, potentially setting up to be the best of all time, is a very cool thing to experience as fans of the esport, because it doesn't happen all the time. So guys, let us know, as always, in the comments, what do you think? Are you on Team Ian, Team John, Team neither of them? What do you think about this? What do you think about Atlanta FaZe compared to, say, OpTic Vold and also complexity? Let us know, but that'll be it for us. We'll see how everything plays out in the major in just a couple days.